Okay. Hey, thanks, wine fanatics. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is going to be great. A great evening. Couple things. I just want to mention that there's a handful of people that were here at the Bouchon wine tasting here at our home this weekend. It was an awesome event. We all had a great time, and Jason seemed to enjoy it a lot. I want to thank, before we get into introductions, I want to thank uh, Laura and Joe Tinker for introducing me to Jim, or at least making the connection. That's how went up there, and my wife and I got to have some wine with him and get into meet your makers here. And I want to thank a special thanks to Jim and Rosie for the wine and making all that happen. So now I would like to welcome Jim Moroney and Anthony Yount. We are going to discuss. I just want to let you know how things are going to go. Obviously, Anthony has his hands in a few projects. We are discussing 6 Mile Bridge tonight, but Anthony has agreed to answer some questions when we go through our normal format. And then some other day, we'll have Anthony join us and we can discuss those other projects. But tonight, we're talking about 6 Mile Bridge. But I'm sure you'll be able to get fit. So I think for organization purposes, if you have questions later after we're done with the normal portion, how most of you know how this works, just put them in the comment thread. Make sure that's open, and I'll open that in a minute. And then we'll share those with Anthony, and he can answer when we're done with the 6 Mile Bridge portion. So without further ado, I'm going to hand off to Jason, and let's start to meet Anthony or David or Jim. Sorry, Jim Moroney and Anthony Yount from 6 Mile Bridge.
Thank you, Mike. I don't know how much wine we've had already, but cheers. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Jim. Welcome, Anthony. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all for dialing in tonight. A lot of familiar faces tonight, so you probably know how this format goes. Our structure is much like that of a tasting room experience. Jim, Anthony, we're going to focus the start on just getting to know you personally, and then we'll transition over to the business a little bit. And then we'll kind of conclude with, as Mike mentioned, we'll open up to questions from the group. The group will grow in size a little bit as we go. We'll find out what our draw is compared to opening NBA finals tonight in a few minutes. But again, thank you both for joining. I'm going to go a little bit out of our normal sequence because, Jim, I want to start with, I usually wait to get into the name a little bit later as we transition to the business, but I think this also gives tie into your background, which is really kind of how we start. So if we could, can you give us some background on, and I think that might have been where you guys were going when I dialed in earlier, but tell us a little bit about the 6 Mile Bridge name and how that led you to the fourth estate.
Okay. 6 Mile Bridge is actually the little town in County Clare, Ireland, from where my great-great-grandfather emigrated in 1852. And he had a 2-year-old son with him whose name was Jim Moroney. So my great-grandfather and my namesake. I've been to 6 Mile Bridge twice. If you're ever on the west side of Ireland, about a little south of the middle, and you're in County Clare, anywhere near 6 Mile Bridge, don't stop. There's nothing there. It is not. I tried to find an iconic bridge. I tried to find something to put on the label, and there was nothing. I spent some time in the morning climbing over cemeteries looking for dead Moroneys. I couldn't find any of them either. So I just grew up with the name. I knew where our ancestors came from. I thought it's a great name. And unfortunately, that's about it. The only other thing I will tell you is that the label, if you have a bottle of our wine or have had a bottle of our wine, you'll see a very odd looking thing on the label that is actually a biretta, a hat that a Catholic priest would wear. And the legend goes that on a day when there was voting in town to either favor the landlords or favor the tenant farmers, this particular landlord decided to make sure they voted the right way. And he sent his militia with them. The militia met up with another group of tenant farmers, a larger group headed up by two priests, Father Clune and one other priest. The militia decided this was a mob. They opened up fire. They killed 7 people, wounded another 18, put all of them in prison except for Father Clune and the other priest. And its legend is that Father Clune's biretta was found on the ground with a hole through it. So what you see on our label is an upside down biretta with a string going through it to represent where the bullet hole was. And I tell you that story because I told it in the tasting room about the first month. And our tasting room manager, Rosie, said, Jim, there are 3 things we don't talk about in the tasting room. I said, really? What are those? He said, religion, politics, and death. And your story has all 3. So I am now banned from telling that story, except if asked what's on our label. So there you go. And that's where the label comes from. That's where the name comes from, SixMileBridge.
Well, I'm glad to hear the story. I think I've read the version of it on the website, but even better coming from you directly. I do think Dead Moroney is a great, at least 80s rock band name.
It would be.
I think that would have worked.
There's now I think a Megan Moroney. She's I think a country singer.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Jim. Anthony, I feel like I haven't met you yet, but I feel like you were born into wine. I think the perception I have knowing Paso so well, but give us the actual history. What did you do before wine?
I was about as far from wine as you can be. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, raised. Ironically, the first American viticultural area is Augusta, Missouri. Not a lot to write home about. Don't go searching out the wines, but just around the corner from where I grew up. And I came out here to San Luis Obispo to study agriculture in 2003, and then just fell in love with the area, fell in love with the wines from the area. Ironically, that summer I was moving out here, my brother and I took a long road trip through the Western US, and we ended up in Missoula, Montana. And we ate at this restaurant called The Depot. It's still there today. And my big brother, who was starting to get into wine, convinced the waitress to serve me underage, and he had ordered a bottle of 98 Beaucastel, and that was like the first wine I'd ever had that was
in Montana.
In Montana,
Right.
Wow.
but that was the first wine I ever had that just sort of knocked my socks off. You know, before that it was Boone's Farm or something along those lines. So I found wine through Rhone Varieties, and obviously a brand that has a partnership with the Paso area, and happened to be on my way to Cal Poly to study agriculture and never left.
Wow. I mean, kudos to whoever was buying wine at that place in Montana.
You know what? I was just in Helena like 2 weeks ago, and there's a little wine shop there, and it has wines, maybe the best selection of wine I have seen in any one small independent wine bar anywhere in the world.
Wow.
So something's happening up there.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So-
Californians are moving there.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. So, Jim, throughout your career, in your time off, limited as it may be, what have you enjoyed doing in your free time?
In my free time now, these days, traveling. Barbara and I love to travel. We're headed to Italy on Saturday. we usually go to a place where it is a wine region that we also enjoy, and then find some other things to do. We have 5 children, 3 grandchildren, and we love spending time with them. We travel with them also, not the grandchildren quite yet, they're a little too young. You know, kind of it. Like everybody else, I'll play a little golf, and I'll watch a good, you know, Drops of God series on, you know, TV.
Season 2's coming soon.
Yeah. So all of those, but that's, you know, pretty normal stuff. I don't do falconry. I don't, you know, nothing, you know, kind of exotic, kind of right down the middle.
I just started my wife and I started Drops of God last night, 2 episodes. I didn't even see it on Apple TV last year. I didn't know it was there.
It's a good show. It's a good show. I think it becomes a show about wine critics, but I'll stop. I won't give anything else away there. Jim, for Italy, I mean, Italy's wine region top to bottom. Obviously, a lot of different wines there. Where are you heading this time?
Well, we're actually going to be hiking in the Dolomites, so we'll be in northern Italy near the Austrian border. So actually, I think we'll see a little Italian wine. I think we're going to see some Austrian wine too, which will be interesting. This is a little different. Normally, we're a little lower down, you know, in the Rome, Siena, Florence, you know, areas, counties, Brunellos, so on and so on.
A little more white wines this trip, sounds like.
Yes, there'll be more whites, definitely.
Get you some good Franciacorta.
Okay, I'll look for it. I'm not
Sparkling wine.
very smart on Austrian wine, so I'm trying to brush up a little bit before I go.
Anthony, my math says you have no free time. But if you did, what would you like to do with it?
Oh man, I have just a little bit of free time. We enjoy raising our own animals here on the farm. So we raise pigs, ducks, chickens, and sheep. And I really enjoy the fruits of their harvest, if you will, and cooking with that. I get out and do a little bit of fly fishing. That's what brought me to Montana a couple weeks ago. And other than that, it's hanging with the family. We have 2 little girls, 8 and 4, and teaching them to swim right now. So that's a blast.
That's a lot. There's no local fly fishing, right? You have to travel for that usually.
You know, some of the big vineyards that have ponds on them tend to be stocked. So like I can get out and fish for largemouth bass on some of the private vineyards. I'll take the girls for that, but they of course have more fun digging for worms than they do trying to catch fish. There's a little bit just north of us in the Santa Lucia Mountains.
You have to change up your gear if you're going for largemouth bass, I assume.
Yeah, you know, last time I brought my 3-weight and it wasn't a very successful trip. I lost a lot of flies.
Yeah, I bet. Jim, favorite non-wine adult beverage?
Oh man, you know, I mean, I really honestly don't drink anything but wine and beer. So I would say a Shiner Bock from Texas.
Shiner Bock.
Dark beer, Shiner Bock would be my beer of choice, and that's about as far as I go in the alcohol. I kind of gave up, you know, liquor long ago. Just didn't have a taste for it anymore.
Shiner Bock is a legacy brewer for sure.
Yeah.
Anthony, how about you?
Oh man, this time of year I'm reaching for a gin and tonic. Probably using Monkey 47 if I can afford it and find it. Otherwise, wintertime, I like a good bourbon.
Favorite bourbon?
You know, probably E.H. Taylor that I can afford.
Yeah.
You know, there's nicer stuff there, but the whole world of bourbon's gotten so outrageous.
Right.
But, you know, like Jim, I don't drink much other than wine these days.
Yeah, but when you come to my house, you always get a beer.
Well, you know.
It sounds like that's all you have to offer.
other than wine he's made, that's about right.
Well, we hear every month it takes a lot of good beer to make good wine. A lot of beer to make good wine.
I think it's a lot of shitty beer to make good wine.
That's probably not the case, yeah. So Jim, you left us off. You're in Dallas. I know we didn't get deep into this, though. I've heard some of the story before. You are kind of deep into the media world. Can you take us back there, and then what transitions you from media into wine?
Well, my career was spent in the media, in broadcast television, and in newspapers. We owned about 17 television stations across the country. We had KXTV in Sacramento, if anybody's from Sacto. That was one of our stations. We owned the Press Enterprise down in Riverside, California, if anybody is familiar with that paper. There you go. Okay, Tinkers too. Thank you, Tinkers. And so that was really my career. I started our internet business in 1997, right when I don't think they were capitalizing internet then. And I took our TV stations and our newspapers and put them online. The newspapers had a little bit of presence. The television station just had PDFs of their anchor people. There was nothing interactive about their websites. And that, of course, everything has changed since then. And I did that, and I ended up that company running it as their chairman and CEO, and I retired in 2018. And if you want me to talk about getting into wine, I can, but that's kind of my career.
Yeah, how do you go from
Jason, real quick, Jim always undersells himself, but one of the things that has always impressed me so much is his grasp of the importance of a free press and what that brings to a democracy. So, Jim, if you can give us just your 30,000-foot elevator pitch on that and how it's so important in the world, especially today.
Well, I'll end where I usually end if I talk about this, so I won't bore you. If you go around the world today and you believe that you are in a country that has a legitimate democracy as we understand it, you will always find three things, not two, not one, but all three. One is a free press. The second is a rule of law. And the third is a fair and open election. And if you find a country that has diminished or taken control of, probably better, you can look at Orban in Turkey. Orban in Hungary. Hungary and Erdogan in Turkey. They have basically taken control of their media. Erdogan has tried to really end their Supreme Court and replace it with all of his lackeys. So despite the fact that they claim themselves to be democracies, I wouldn't call them that. So I just believe the free press is important to keep all of us informed. If you're not an informed citizen and you vote, you will wind up getting the government that you deserve because you're not informing yourself. And so I still believe that there is a good media, and I don't even like the word media anymore because it includes lots of kinds of purveyors of information that call themselves news organizations, and they're really just out to win one side of an argument or another.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well said.
Very good.
Thank you for that. So how do you go from media world to the wine world, Jim? What's that transition look like?
Well, actually, it goes all the way back to college. Barbara and I were in school in Northern California. We met there, really, and we would go up to Napa and go wine tasting, and there were, I don't think, more than 25 wineries you could visit. They didn't charge you anything. Of course, they only gave you about 2 ounces of wine at the end of an interminable tour that they made you take. We learned that if we went to the Christian Brothers tour, that if we hung back long enough with our group going in, we could fade into the group coming out and skip the tour and get 2 ounces of wine. You know, that's where we were. But then we could go out and just go into a vineyard and sit in somebody's vine row and have a picnic with a bottle of wine and some cheese and bread. And we just fell in love with wine. We fell in love with each other. And I know this sounds like I'm making it up, but we said, if we get married and have kids and have a career, when that's all said and done, we want to open up a winery. And we had a friend that moved from Dallas to Cambria, and we came to visit him on July of 2010. And he said, let's go wine tasting tomorrow. And I said, Sammy, I don't want to drive 5 or 6 hours up to Napa. And he said, you idiot. There's like 250 bonded wineries within 35 miles of where we are. And I said, where? He said, Paso Robles. I said, haven't heard of it. And we went to Paso Robles. We went over to the west side. The first place we stopped at was Nichols. Help me.
RN Estate.
Yeah, RN Estates, Roger Nichols Estate. We were on the east side. I'm sorry if I said west. And
what year was this again, Jim?
This would be 2010.
2010,
And as we're driving around, Barbara and I said, this place is beautiful. We met some people that seemed authentic and genuine. And we said, okay, I've retired almost, not quite yet, but I'm going to in a couple of years. Our kids are pretty much through at least their undergraduate years. And so we bought a piece of property in 2013 and then started making wine in 2016, except for, as we talked about, the 2014 and 2015 McQueen, which Anthony sourced some grapes probably from Denner, Anthony, I suppose. And we made a Cabernet for a couple of years to kind of practice. So that's it. That's how we just always wanted to start a winery. And finally we got to a place where we did, and we love Paso, and we still do. We think it's a beautiful area. We think the people are so friendly, and it's collaborative. You know, if I need help, they'll give me help. And if they need help, it's not a cutthroat competitive thing, at least not from my point of view. Maybe it is other places, but the neighbors and others in the business seem to be really supportive of one another and probably tied into being supportive of the region.
Yeah, definitely a distinguishing characteristic of Paso from any other wine region I've visited anywhere in the world. Jim, the McQueen, we didn't talk about that. What was the story on that name?
I wanted to just have one label called 6MileBridge, and my bride, Barbara, said, no, you can't do that because this isn't going to be a state fruit and you're going to somehow tarnish the label. And being of the mind that happy wife is happy life, I said, okay. And I said, what are we going to call it? And she said, we're going to call it McQueen, which is my middle name. So that's it. And then we kept it as McQueen, and we still make it. And she was right and I was wrong. It was the right thing to do. We should not have put the estate label on a source fruit wine. And, so
there's no Steve McQueen legend there.
No, I mean, when I was much younger, people would always ask me that question. Oh, wow, are you, Steve McQueen, and, all the motorcycles and all that. And I said, well, I wish I was, but it's my great grandmother on my father's side's maiden name. And that's what it is. So while I have an Irish Moroney name, I have a very Scottish McQueen name.
Got it.
Okay.
So Anthony, it feels like you had a more direct line into the wine business early on, coming straight out to California for school. Was that your path, and what tilted you towards wine?
I still don't know, to be honest. I came out to Poly. I studied agriculture. I came out here because I didn't want to study corn and soybeans and pigs, which is pretty ironic because I may be better known in the town of Paso, at least with the chefs, for the pigs we raise. We actually just ate it in Bloom 2 nights ago, and they've got a Royal Nonsuch Farm pork potato salad on the list right now.
Wow.
But I originally studied ag finance, just kind of thinking you can do finance everywhere. There's agriculture everywhere. It's a great way to get a job. And I was in an interview at what was called Farm Credit West, which is now today my lender. And they asked me where I saw myself in 5 years. And I had this big, like, holy shit, it's not here moment. And I didn't quite say that, but I pretty much said that in the interview, and I didn't get the job. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and took a quarter off of school and worked a harvest at Denner. And that was 2006. And at the time, Amy Butler was making Ed Sellers wines there. Scott Hawley was making Jada. and Alta Colina, and a brand called Vita Luce. Chris Cherry was making Via Creek in there. Justin Smith was making Saxum. It was just kind of the who's who of Paso at the time, and I got to pick everyone's brain on what they were doing and why they were doing it. Of course, everyone was doing something different, and I was hooked. And I've pretty much been there since. So I got out of school that next spring, got pulled back into Denner for the next harvest, and the rest is history.
Or you didn't have a vision of eventually making wine for 5 labels and your own farm and producing pigs for In Bloom.
Nope, that wasn't on the vision board.
So Beaucastel, you mentioned, you said Beaucastel, right?
It was Beaucastel.
I'm sorry?
It was Beaucastel, yes.
Beaucastel, yeah. So in Montana, that was the wine that kind of made that impression on you.
That was the wine. So, no irony in the fact that most of what I do is in the Grenache and Mourvedre realm. Ironically, before I met Jim, and Hillary and I we'd gotten together and we were thinking about what we wanted to do, and had always had this dream of having a vineyard. We hopped the fence on the property that Jim ended up buying and walked the whole thing. And I'd, in my mind, laid out, this slope has Mourvedre in it and this slope has Grenache in it. And unfortunately, we couldn't pull it off, and ended up buying our place out on York Mountain. And the next year I met Jim, and not knowing what property he'd bought, he's telling me all what he's done and what he's going to do. And they're getting ready to put in Cabernet and Petit Verdot and Cab Franc and Merlot. And I get out there, I'm like, holy shit, I'd have put Grenache there. So
The other interesting thing about
I'm very blessed to be able to work with the site. Eventually I'll talk Jim into planting some Grenache and maybe some Mourvedre.
Oh, that's a good question I have coming up. But the other fascinating thing about Beaucastel is their connection to Paso Robles via Hollis Creek, of course. But um, interesting kind of roundabout question there, or connection.
No, and it's so funny because I've only been to Beaucastel once, and it was ironically in 2011, which was the year we bought our property, and Hillary and I took a trip over, and we didn't really know anybody, but I reached out to Neil Collins at Toblis Creek, and he set us up at Beaucastel. And what we didn't realize, we were traveling in August because it's a good time for us to get away, is everyone's on holiday in Europe in August. So none of the winemakers were there, but the gal that did the tasting for us at Beaucastel brought out the red carpet, gave us the full tour. We tasted barrels, we tasted tanks. She asked us what our birth year wines were. She brought out a Vievine Blanc, which is the 100% Roussan, Old Vine Roussan from Hillary's birth year, and the regular Beaucastel from my birth year. And just, they take care of people from Paso because of that connection, which is, what's so wonderful about the whole world of wine is there's definitely a brotherhood to it.
Oh, no doubt. So Jim, was there a wine that made an original impression on you or made you think differently about wine, like the Beaucastel may have done for Anthony?
Yeah, I don't know that this has quite the pedigree of Anthony's wine, but my brother and I would like to drink wine, and we had a limited budget. And we one day bought this is now back in I guess around the late 70s, we bought a bottle of Turley Zinfandel, and we loved it. And we bought a few bottles that we could afford, and we stored them probably improperly, but we would bring them out for some occasion to celebrate. And so I find it ironic that, of course, Turley has a tasting room and facility right down the road from us, not too far. And that is why on our property, we planted about a half an acre of Zinfandel as an homage to a wine or a grape that kind of got me getting into wine, really trying to start distinguishing between different wines other than this, drinking some, $5 bottle of wine that you got at the grocery store. So that was it. It was Turley's Zinfandel.
So of the 30 or so different vineyards that Turley sources from. Do you remember what vineyard it was?
God, I wish I did. I really don't. Today, if they have a vineyard that's like the name of a guy that worked at ABC. That I've liked that. What is his name? I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway,
It ends with OFF, right?
That's right.
That's all I can remember, but I connected that.
I'll come back to it in a minute. But anyway, I have no idea. I probably didn't even realize there were different, vineyards. I probably just saw Turley Zinfandel bought it, and one may have been Haney, and one of it is something else. Uberoff. That's the one that I like today. If I buy a Turley Zin, I like to buy their Uberoff vineyard.
Got it. And so your first vintage was what you said
16.
2013 you bought the property.
We
2016
planted in
was
2013. Yeah, we planted in
Okay.
2013. I think we bought it in 12.
And so 16 was the first vintage?
Yeah, that was the first vintage.
Okay. And what all was released in that first vintage? Was it just cab or
We had a cab. We had a thing we called a state cuvee, which was a Bordeaux blend. I think at the time it did have all 5 of the sort of primary Bordeaux varietals. We didn't have any Carmenere, but we had the other 5. Yes, there it is, a state cuvee. Wow. Okay. And then we
pull
had
out from my cellar tonight?
very, very good. And we had Paladin, which was our Zinfandel blend, Zinfandel plus some of the Bordeaux varietals. Paladin was our black lab that reminded me of a TV show I watched with my dad called Have Gun Will Travel, and he dressed all in black. And he had a dog thing. So we did that, and I think we did Sauvignon Blanc and Anthony. I think there was just those 4, weren't there?
I think it was those 4.
Yeah.
So at what point, I assume before you planted, you had this vision of you want to do kind of old world Bordeaux style?
Yeah, I told Anthony, I said, I want to make, 13.5%, alcohol Bordeaux wines. And he said, great, move to Bordeaux. And I said, what? I said, what?
This is
You're not
fascinating.
making Yeah, we get twice the sun days that they do in Bordeaux. You aren't doing 13% Bordeaux wines here. And then he explained to me about balance and all the things that could, you could have a 14 and a 14.5, and it'll have all the wonderful properties that you want. So that I will tell you this, that I asked Jordan Ferrettini at Epoch only because I knew the Armstrongs a little bit, because they had a Dallas presence. They both went to SMU in Dallas. He was on the board of trustees at SMU. And so I met him, and then his winemaker, and I asked her about, could she recommend a winemaker to me? And she recommended 2 of them and said, if either one of them will make your wine, then you don't need to look back. And one of those was Anthony. And I asked I said, could we meet? And told him I wanted to make our wine. And he said, what kind of wine do you want to make? And I said, well, I want to make a wine that I want to drink every day. And he goes, okay, I'll make your wine. A few months later, I said, Anthony, was there a wrong answer to that question? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, well, what would that have been that you would have told me no? And he said, if you told me you wanted to make a 95-point wine, I would have politely declined. I said, oh, okay. He said, but you want to make a wine you want to drink every day? Then I'm all in. And it's been a great partnership since then. And we have a lot of fun, and it's great working with Anthony. Hillary was our vineyard manager until this year, and that was also more in the family and lots of fun. And we got to see their kids born and grow and get in the pool and watch them, become a family. And it's been a great relationship.
Anthony, when you first hear this vision of old world wines in Paso, what's going through your head? I'm gonna harvest in July. What are you thinking?
No, I'm all in on a good challenge, and the way I always look at projects is, do I want to work with a person? First time I met Jim, it was so comfortable. The conversation was great. Getting to meet Barbara the next trip out. They're just really, really genuine, great people, and those are the people you want to work with. and then I actually, Jim was sort of my guinea pig for this because, the whole, I want to make wines that I want to drink. And I said, all right, send me the 5 bottles of wine that you absolutely love and would drink every day if you were on
That's
your
a
desert
brilliant
island.
idea for getting 5 good
Yeah.
bottles of wine too, by the way.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And, doesn't matter variety, doesn't matter region, doesn't matter vintage. Just send me 5 wines that you think, you'd be happy with if we made. And then I had my assistant winemaker at the time, Paul Hinchberger, who did a stint as a winemaker up at Rangeland for a number of years and is now making wine up in the Hood River area. And he took those bottles. I didn't know what they were. He put them in brown bags and then picked 3 wines from the region to put in that tasting. And we drank them, Jim and Hillary and
I think
Andy and myself and Jenny, who is our sort of original GM. And we sat on we put a plastic table on a piece of plywood where they were building their house. And we tried these, I think it was 8 bottles of wine. Kevin was there too, who helped put in the vineyard, and we just discussed them. And there was everything there. I mean, if I can recall, there was a Fontati Flaccinello. So 100%
So,
Sangiovese.
Italian
Yeah.
Chianti Classico, right?
Yeah. And then there was a 100-acre from Napa, which was about as big and ripe as they come. And
wow,
then
there's the scale, there's the spectrum there.
Grace family. I think there was a Bryant in there from Jim's collection.
I think there was a Paul Hobbs Argentinian.
That's right.
Malbec Cab blend
Yep.
called something. Yeah, that was in there.
I think those were your 5, and then Paul snuck in there. He put a L'Aventure Cab, probably an older vintage 06, because I'm sure Stefan would not have given him a current vintage. And then he had, I think it was a Justin Cab, and then he put the 09 Mother of Exiles in there. And Jim's favorite was the Mother of Exiles, and I was like, well, I think I can make that wine.
I could not figure out how he manipulated this whole thing that came out as my favorite, but so I really did. I was stunned. I was like, my God, these are my favorite wines. And I thought, okay, well, this is destiny then, meant to be.
Well, what a fascinating story. So all those 8 wines weren't to represent the style that you wanted. They were to identify which of those wines were most closely resemble the wine that you wanted to make.
Right.
Yeah, I think it just to kind of get an overall sense of, what, I mean, by sending him 5 wines that were all very different, what other kind of things do I like? And I suppose he was going to get some kind of, information from that. I don't know, but I sent him what he asked for, and they were, I think, 5 bottles from 5 different, regions.
For the record, I like the Fontati the best.
It's still a favorite of mine. Flaccinello is awesome.
I tasted that Fontati, and it wasn't a great experience, but I digress. So I want to understand more about the old world. So when I think of old world, I think obviously lower alcohol, as you mentioned, Jim. Sometimes that barnyard funk that you'll get with some of the old, especially a Fontati. But what was it? Just the alcohol, the kind of the lower alcohol that you were shooting for in the kind of the old world Bordeaux style, or was there other characteristics?
Well, I think at the time I was just reacting to what was becoming the big in your face Napa cab sort of thing that I didn't particularly like. And I just sort of owed it all to, 14 to 14.5% wine versus a Bordeaux at 13. And I just was trying to say, that's what I want to do. I don't want this in your face, big, jammy, wine that I don't think is that fun to drink. And it certainly doesn't do well with food from my point of view. So that's what I was trying to express. I didn't understand anything about the sort of physiology of grape ripening and so forth. I'm still not very smart about it. And I certainly was, zero smart about it at the time.
Well, I love that you came to Paso and asked that.
Right. Ironically, I think Paso's kind of like we're all about the big red. I mean, Jason and I and some of our friends, we're all like, that's what we're looking for.
But what a niche,
That's
though,
why
right?
why this wine is appealing to us. So
Yeah, but
Yeah,
seriously though, Jim, what a niche. I mean, because there's not a. I mean, I do feel like there's more of a trend going that direction. Anthony, you can probably speak to that, but
yes,
still, I think that's such a smart niche if you can pull it off, which you
Yeah.
clearly have,
Well,
to provide that balance in Paso.
let me say this, that that expression about it starts in the vineyard and all that, the fact that we have wine that people hopefully on this Zoom call enjoy is a testament to Hillary's farming and Anthony's winemaking. And my one smart thing I've done is, sort of stayed out of the way and not tried to act like I know more than I do, which isn't much. And I'm fortunate to have such two good people. And now Dave Bailey, who some of you all may know, when Hillary said she wanted to get back and do some other things and be home more with the kids, Dave lives across Peachy Canyon from us, the old Bailey Ranch, and he's now farming our vineyards. And it takes a great vineyard manager and a great winemaker with great fruit to do what Anthony's been doing, and that's why we're making great wine. I think.
just to be clear, we're talking about Hillary. Are we talking about your wife, Anthony?
Yeah,
Correct.
she was vineyard manager
He's a
for
farmer.
yeah, she was doing all the farming for what, Anthony,
Oh,
since
okay.
about maybe 17 through last year.
Yeah, she did 7 vintages as vineyard manager. I can
Anthony,
tell you, Hillary and I have very different conversations than Dave Bailey and I do, just for the record.
Yeah,
Anthony, from your perspective, when you're trying to make an old world Bordeaux wine, other than maybe picking a little bit earlier and cutting back on some of the alcohol content, is there anything else you do to kind of create that style?
For me, and this is the way I approached that tasting, or I came out of that tasting, is the wines that Jim really liked and showed during that tastings all had as much savory qualities to them as they did fruit. And Paso's going to give you fruit. Paso gives you fruit and everything. That's what Paso is known for. If you don't have
Right.
fruit in your wines in Paso, like, just a big miss. So it's all about how do we farm for savory qualities? How do we harvest for savory qualities? How do we sort of pull those out of the ferments? And I'll be very clear, like, these wines are not shy of alcohol. Look on the back of your label. Like, they are 14 to 14.5. I mean, they are what Jim sort of in his mind thought he didn't want. But when I taste you that lineup,
And
you have
14 to 14.5 really means 15, right?
absolutely.
absolutely.
We
Sure.
get a percent.
But they're
Right,
not.
right.
They're not
It always
15,
goes
6.
down, not up.
Yeah, we get a percent. Yeah, it's definitely not going down. So, and that's what turns me on too. I mean, I'm guessing most of you guys have had the Denner wines. Probably some of you have had Royal Nonsuch. I think stylistically, I like wines that have savory qualities to them. I think they're more complex. I don't want to be shy of fruit. And while, we talk about old world influences, I still think the wines we're making are very, very true to the Paso terroir. There is fruit. There's this great acidity, this liveliness to the wine. And that's what's sort of the hallmark of what I think makes Paso stand out in the world of wine right now. So some of it's picking earlier. A lot of it's what Hillary and now Dave is doing in the vineyard, as far as making sure we have ample shade within the fruit canopy, so we're not getting desiccation or raisoning on the fruit. We're extracting with more oxygen, which seems to drive more savory qualities in the wine. We're not moving the wines a lot. I like to refer to it as lazy fair winemaking. So, the wines kind of do their thing, and we're there to taste them and check them out, but not move them all around and rack them every month just to prove we're doing some work. So it's a pretty simple approach from my standpoint. But I think, again, we're I may differ from some of my peers is I really take a worldwide perspective on wine. I love wines from everywhere. I'm drinking a Sancerre tonight because it's hot here in Paso, and thinking about how I can make the 6 Mile Sauvignon Blanc better next vintage. So, you know, what sets wine apart is being true to the terroir that it's grown in, but also taking the approach of what are the best wines in the world and what do they taste like and how do they interpret their terroir. And that's really all I'm trying to do at 6 Mile.
You mentioned, so I was curious about how you make a wine more savory, and I think you touched on that with extracting with more oxygen. Is that what you said?
That's one of the things I think you get a little more, you just get a little more quality of the grape itself. The grapes have the savory quality to them, and it's picking at the right level where they're going to express that, and then incorporating oxygen to make sure that most of the qualities are from the fruit itself. And I mean from the fruit, not from a flavor standpoint, but actually of the grape and what it wants to give.
Got it. Interesting. That's fascinating. What, Jim, from your perspective, what's the most challenging part of making wine?
Well,
Selling it.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if this is the challenging part, but it's challenging to be because it's uncontrollable is the weather. You know, you think you're having this great growing season, all of a sudden you get 10 days in a row over 110, and it's like, holy hell, you know, what just happened?
2022.
Yeah, 22. So
Yeah.
I think to me, you know, I just challenges are things I can't do anything about, but I wish I could. And sometimes it just seems like the weather, of course, the weather is going to do what it's going to do. And sometimes that's beneficial and sometimes that's detrimental. And I think that's what keeps me up a little bit.
It's funny because you guys both just touched on the two most common answers we get between selling it and the weather.
Selling it most popular, yeah.
Yeah. What's the most exciting part, Anthony?
The weather. And selling it.
Anthony said to me once, he said, Jim, if the weather was always the same all the time, everything would get boring. The wines would all taste the same every vintage. And who wants that? And I thought, okay, that's fair. I agree with that.
No, you know, everyone talks about 22 vintage, and like I had so much fucking fun in 22. I can't tell you. Like it sucked. I mean, Ramona came home from the first week of school with COVID, gave it to both Hillary and I. I was farming Denner at the time. She was farming 6 Mile. We had 2 sick kids at home. And I would go in and start a crew at 3 a.m. with a mask, and then get to 6 Mile and start a crew at 5 a.m. and then get back and tell my crew what to do. I mean, it sucked, but it was like, this is what you signed up for. And if this isn't it, like, don't do it. And I think we made some incredible wines in 22, as challenging as it was, and being able to go to
war.
winemaker's
vintage.
Yeah, you know, and Jim started off with the comment about D-Day, and it's like, go to battle with people, and you have great people that you work with, and you sit down and you say, hey, you know what? The next 2 weeks, we're going to pretty much live here. And we've got the best team possible. We have the vision of what we're going to do. The work's going to be harder. It's going to be longer. We're going to be tired. We're going to sit down. We're going to have 3 meals together a day, and we're going to knock it out of the park. And when you can do that as a leader and see results come through, I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than being able to enjoy that bottle of wine and remember those hard times. And I think I make better wine in challenging vintages than I do in the easy vintages because we're challenged to do it. So that's what turns me on.
Yeah, well said. And Jim, the most rewarding part to you?
I just think it's opening one of these bottles of wine after, you know, they've been in the barrel for 2 years, bottled for another year, and then, you know, we taste them maybe even a couple of years later, and I just say, I mean, you know, it's kind of a Texas thing. Shit, man, this is good. And I'm like, and this is my vineyard. I'm still sort of like amazed by it now. Knowing Anthony and Hillary and now Dave, I believe it. I almost expect it, but it's still sort of like, I can't believe that we're making this wine, because I always looked at Barbara and I said, well, now what's going to happen if we hire these people and we buy this place and the wine and we don't like it and it's not good or very good, at least according to us? How do we even sell that? Or we couldn't even give it as a gift to somebody. They think we hated them. So
Jim, you know what you do?
What?
You sell it to Treasury for $1 billion.
All right. Well,
Whoa.
okay. I'm not going to touch that. I had something I was going to say, but I'm not going to say it. So anyway, that to me, that's what's rewarding is being able to enjoy this wine. And maybe when very close friends of mine who I know very well and are very honest with me, they send me a picture from a dinner that they're having at their home and they're pouring our wine. I say, wow, that's something, because, you know, if they didn't like it, they certainly wouldn't pour it for their friends. They might drink it themselves under duress, and I think that's really rewarding. It just makes me feel good. Like, wow, this is really good. I believe it, but so do some other people. The Tinkers have been long time big fans of our wine, and I appreciate that very much. And all of our other, good customers.
Those Tinkers are good people.
They are.
So, Jim, it's one of our favorite segments here. We want to get from you a pro tip. And so we're counting you in the pro category as a winemaker, wine business owner. So what we're looking for from you is something you may see from your experience that wine consumers could do differently or better to improve their wine enjoyment. Whether it's where they buy their wine, how they store the wine, how they drink their wine, anything.
Well,
pro tip you can share with your.
Two very quick things. One is just about our wine. I would tell you that if you can resist drinking all of our wine and you leave half of it and you open it up the next night, it will be better than it was the first night. It will, again, I'm just almost 9 out of 10 times, if I'm able to quit drinking it and cork it and put it in the refrigerator and bring it out the next day, it's revealing a whole different sort of profile that I find is a little more savory and really wonderful. And then a very simple thing, and maybe everybody on this call, I'm sure knows it, but I see so many people put their half-filled bottle, and they lay it down like they would lay it in a cellar on its side. Well, that exposes so much more surface area of the wine to oxygen than if you stand it up. So my pro tip would be stand it up. Don't lay it flat in the refrigerator if you're trying to keep the oxygen from interacting with it quite so much.
That's a good one. I don't think we've had either of those before. Well done. And Anthony, how about you?
Unfortunately, we drained this one, Jim, so we don't get the there you go.
Well, I tried. I should have started with that and, my pro tip early.
Go ahead, Anthony.
My pro tip is drink it all tonight, drink all that vintage, and we'll make some more next year.
But so Jason, I know that Anthony knows I'm going to do this. So I don't know if this is a pro tip, but I guess it is. We were on a call, not unlike this back during COVID. And a woman on the call said, well, Anthony, people tell me I need to put these wines down and I need to wait, years and years before I drink them. And, and some people say, oh no, just go ahead and open them up. And so what is your recommendation? Should I open these wines up, in the first 3 years, or should I lay them down, for 8 or 9 years? And Anthony goes, well, my kind of recommendation around wine is it's better to be a pedophile than a necrophile. And I looked at him like, what? However, there is something to that for all of us on this call who have laid a wine down for a long time, opened it up, and it has oxidized or whatever. So anyway, I've told that story many times. I get lots of laughs. A couple times, some people look at me like, what did you just say? So anyway,
Jim, I think the answer to that question is you always buy at least 3 bottles.
there you go.
One you can drink
That-
early, one a little bit longer, and one for much longer.
Yeah, I call it the 257.
257.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
Sorry, Anthony, I couldn't help it.
That's all good. I still live by those.
We call
Nothing
that
worse than
infant
opening
sight
up
when you
something
drink
that
too
you
early.
bought and aged for 20 years and it's turned to vinegar, though.
Yeah.
Right.
like
I
that
totally
either.
agree with that. I'd rather open it early and let it clear out and watch it evolve than open it up too late and realize I missed out on it. So I know we're at time, but I want to give, and we'll open it up to whichever one of you wants to share this. Just talk a little bit about current lineup and wine club.
And I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to show a little bit of video of your place, Jim, that
Sure.
Brian Broom took. So, oh, this is always tricky. But I'm going to share a screen and just go ahead and talk about the tasting room and your club and everything.
But I would, all of you that have not had a chance to come and visit us in our tasting room, I really would ask you to do it. It's a beautiful site. It's right up against the vineyard. It has over 150-year-old California coast oak. That canopy comes around a deck that you can go out on, and it's magnificent and peaceful and really, really special. I think the thing that I don't know that it is unique to us, but I don't think that it's done in most places in Paso that I visit. We have a very strict one host to one group policy. So when you come in and you're trying to, you're someplace and they pour you an ounce and a half of wine and then you don't see them for the next 20 minutes because they're off helping other people. We have somebody that's always there with you to talk to you as much as you want, not to talk to you at all if you don't want, but at least to be sure that your wine's being refreshed. And if we're offering another pour, give it to you. There's our coast oak. You can see it. There's that beautiful deck. We did have an arborist come out to be sure that we were doing nothing to hurt this beautiful tree. That's our outdoor patio in the back. And I think on the other side, you saw the vineyard, our second vineyard we planted, named our Grace Vineyard after my maternal grandmother. This is new right here. I think the Tinkers, you may not have seen that. That's new furniture we put there on that outside patio in that particular area. And that's the indoor. And then we have a reserved tasting room that's next to this right through that window right there. So I think it's a beautiful spot. Would love you to come out. I think we offer some of the very best hospitality because we have informed people that know wine. This is the Grace Vineyard that literally comes right up next to the patio of the tasting room. You'll see the tree here in a minute if they keep panning. You can see how close it is from there. And our lineup is the things we talked about at the beginning, but we split our estate cuvee into a left bank and a right bank wine. The Shannon is the left bank led by Cab, with the other Bordeaux blend, other wines blended in, or grapes blended in. And then we have Limerick, which is the right bank wine that has more Merlot than anything else, and also some of the other Bordeaux varietals. And the reason we named them that is because Limerick is on the right side of 6 Mile Bridge on the map, about 6 miles away, and Shannon is on the left side of 6 Mile Bridge on the map, also about 6 miles away. So they form sort of an equilateral triangle, and Shannon and Limerick. Now, it would have been really nice if Limerick was on the left side, because you'd have L&L, but I couldn't make that happen. But then we've also now, I think the first time, we've been doing Cab Franc varietal. We had a Merlot varietal that we produced, and in homage or into a little shot in the gut to the movie Sideways, which is the 20th anniversary this year, we call that Merlot Upside, because we believe in Merlot and we like Merlot, and we have a beautiful Merlot fruit off of our property. So we have a varietal Merlot. We made a varietal Petit Verdot. I think the first time, Anthony, we made that. And in 2022, it's already, I don't guess it's in the bottle, but it's in the barrel. We have a varietal Malbec that we're going to do Our incantation with this Malbec lead blend is, I think, year in and year out, often our best wine. And so we decided to make a varietal Malbec. So we now have all 5 of the wines for which we have made a varietal wine, starting with the Cab, of course. Then we also have Semillon, which will bottle possibly as a varietal for the first time in December. We'll also more than likely blend it with the Sauvignon Blanc to get a blend, and then we'll keep doing a varietal Sauvignon Blanc, which people really love. The only thing I'll mention is that we planted some additional vineyard last year, and we have 2 new varietals that are sanctioned in Bordeaux now to be allowed to be grown there. One of them is Touriga Nacional, which a lot of people know, particularly from Portugal. And the other one is Marcelin, which is as close to Rhone as we're going to get so far, because it's a hybrid between Cabernet Sauvignon and Grenache. And that fruit will probably be, Anthony, what, 3 more years from now?
3 years.
3 years from now. And we'll use them probably as blending grapes to see how that does. And if we think it's worth making a varietal, we'll do that as well. But we thought we'd experiment with something else. Anthony, like me, we like to experiment and try different things and not just keep doing things the way we always did them. So once Bordeaux announced these 5 new grapes that they allowed, we planted them pretty quickly thereafter, and we'll see how they do.
You want to talk about your club?
I was going to just say.
Okay, the club, just very quickly, we have a typical club. It's twice a year shipments of either 8 bottles of 4 and 4, or 16 bottles, 8 and 8, or 12 bottles and 12 bottles. We release in September. All of our wine has been in barrel and bottle for at least 3 years. We're trying to get it to be at 4 years because it will be better when somebody opens it, particularly in the tasting room where people aren't always quite ready for a wine that isn't just absolutely completely approachable. So we may kind of move into a 4th year, but it's going to take a little time to do that. But we have perks for the club, like inclusive shipping, flat rate shipping, free tastings, 4 people or 6 people, depending on which one you do, priority to all events. So the typical things that you get in clubs. Right now, we still sell all of our wine either to our club or in our tasting room, and we have sold all of our wine through every vintage up till this current one with just those 2 means of sales and distribution, the club or the tasting room. We don't do any distribution except a little bit to about 5 restaurants in Paso, Il Cortile, La Cosecha, Le Petit Canal, I think 6 Test Kitchen, and B.O. Brasserie carry our wine. But we don't sell anything in stores.
That's a nice restaurant portfolio right there.
Jim, you missed one key thing there on the club. The club gets access to a very small production, limited quantity, mostly the single varietal stuff. So I see Jen mentioned the Apparition. That was a wine that was a club only wine. The Petit Verdot you mentioned earlier is club only. The Upside Merlot will be club only.
Cab Franc is often club only. Malbec in 22 will be club only. So we every year we have 2 wines, and thank you, Anthony, that only go to our club members. They're not sold in the tasting room, and they're not sold to the, any other way, not even to the restaurants.
Yeah, good call out. Thank you for that. I've been to the winery. It's beautiful. Wines are delicious.
Thank you.
Like you said, Jim, I recommend anybody that hasn't been out there, go see it. It's a spectacular place, and you'll love the wines. I want to thank you both again for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I think, Mike, you want to open it up to
I was just gonna say that Chris and I were up there in November last year, October, and we got to meet Jim, and fantastic host. Everybody, we've been there 2 times before. The experience there is first class, and the wines are great. And I'll tell you one thing I do remember that I always recall is the first time I went there, the reds were poured before the white, and I thought that was extraordinary. I'm not sure why, I can't explain it, but because I just don't have it just was a better experience to me. And I can't really articulate why, but was that a strategy or?
It was actually done on purpose because, and I can't remember exactly how we described it, but that the experience with that white wine is really better after the reds than starting with the white and then going into the reds. Probably Anthony might have a better reason for that, but we all agreed we thought it was better, and we've kept doing it. Anthony, you have any,
You don't have the mint before dinner. You have the mint after dinner. Maybe on the pillow at bedtime.
Yeah.
There you go. They're much better than what I had to say.
It's interesting though, going around tasting around Paso, it's come up a couple other times where we got the white last, and I found that fascinating. But in all my experiences with probably 20 years ago in there, that was the first place I went to where we didn't get the white in advance.
Well, Mike, I also just want to say, honestly, we always ask people how they hear about us, and we have lots and lots of people say, oh, well, we were listening to, your show, and somebody brought it up, or we're on the website, and it's, mentioned by people on the website. And I appreciate that. That's how that's our best marketing is word of mouth from people that have been to our tasting room. So you're another great way they get that message out. I appreciate that, and thanks.
Thank you so much, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Can I
And
share an
transparently, one of our team members, Tisha, has been a big advocate, and she has
Yes.
spoken highly of you guys in the business for quite some time.
Yeah, well,
May I-
Tisha was a great tasting room, person for us, and we were sorry when she left, but she moved on to other things.
Yeah, hold on, Larry, just a second. So, okay.
May I share
We're
an
gonna open up the
experience?
questions about 6 Mile Bridge right now, okay? So
Okay,
if you got a question, go ahead and ask.
Yep.
Go ahead, Larry.
all right. We were up there a couple years ago, and I wheeled in there a little too fast, and I hit a big rock out there in front of the tasting room, and I punctured a tire. Okay,
Oh,
it's
no.
late in the afternoon. We're the last group there. Rosie was serving us, and my wife said, "I think you got a flat tire." I said, "No, I don't." And sure enough, I had a flat tire. And I said, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And Rosie said, "Do you have a spare? Here's a rental car." I said, "I don't know." Rosie whips out there, throws the back end up, pulls the tire, changes the tire for me. Okay. And we came down that mountain all the way up back into Paso. And so every time I go out there, I go to 6 Mile Creek and see Rosie,
It is next level hospitality right there.
I mean, to tell you, talking about selling wine.
That's
I think we left
going
with a case of wine.
that's going extra mile, Jim.
Yes.
That's
I
the
thank you
seventh
very
mile.
much.
That's going the 7th mile.
The 7th mile, right?
That's what we call service.
I will tell Rosie that you told that story. She'll love it. She is a
Yeah.
great handy person.
She's a good girl.
Thank you very much.
Do you know that? Hey, Jim, do you know this man, Larry here? He comes all
Yes,
the way,
I know Larry. He's come
yeah,
down.
Florida. Comes all the way from Florida every year. So
Yeah. No, he's been a buyer and a visitor.
no, he's great. Great guy. Anybody else have a question about 6 Mile Bridge?
Well, I have a question in general about the winemaking, and that is, you mentioned 110-degree days out there, and that's going to tend to get grapes that have got a lot of sugar content to them. You ever run into a problem of residual sugar in the wine because the yeast got all consumed, fermentation is complete, and yet there's still some sugar left?
We haven't, and that's one of my big sticklers. If I'm drinking sweet wine, I want to drink sweet wine. If I'm drinking dry wine, I want to drink dry wine. So
Right.
we're pretty meticulous about harvesting and getting it in before things get too ripe. And in the instance where maybe we miss it in part of a block or a section of a block, we're extremely meticulous in our sorting process. So everything's done about as slowly as it needs to be done for the quality of the wine and making sure we get things dry. Now, occasionally I get alcohols a little bit higher than I want to see it, and that's where blending kind of works its magic. because we'll always have something, even in those warm vintages, that we can pick a little bit less ripe and bring things back down into balance.
Okay, so you get around that by picking a little earlier on time, but not letting it go late.
It's
Okay.
all about attention to detail. You know, we want to pick it when it's ripe, not underripe, not overripe.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we got to try, what was it, the intonation, the one with the Malbec blend? At,
Yeah, incantation.
yeah, very nice. I was very
Thank
happy
you.
with that.
Thank
Good
you.
one.
Eric wants to know if there's any plans for winemakers dinner at the house.
Yes, there's one coming up at the end of this month, and we still have a few places that we can take people. So we would love to have you come visit. It'll be at the house, and Barbara and I will be there. And I know Anthony, and if Hillary is able to make it, she will too. And I'm pretty confident we'll get Dave to visit. So we love hosting people at our house, and we have a lot of fun.
Do we have one in October, Jim?
Yeah, and we also have another one in October, and that will probably be at the house, but I don't know that we've completely finalized that yet. But there's another one, I'd say kind of the third week maybe of October.
Well,
Looks like the 18th of October.
When you get it, Jim, send me the date, because there's a
We'll do. I'll send you both of
couple on
them.
here. We're planning a trip up there. So
Great. We'd love to have you.
yeah, be awesome. Anybody else have any questions? Go
I've
ahead.
got one. I know you guys touched on aging wines, and I'm just wondering if there are any of your wines that you would age a little bit longer than any of the other ones. Right now, I've got an 18 and a bunch of 19s.
Anthony?
So you've got two very ageable vintages. I think both of those are drinking relatively similar at the moment, and will age relatively similarly. Of those wines, I would drink Paladin if you have Paladin sort of the earliest. If you have any of the extended barrel age versions, those I think drink better earlier because we've aged them for an additional year in barrel.
So like the Shannon.
Shannon, if it's an extended Shannon, the
Yes.
regular Shannon is, I think, needs a little bit more time. Like that's you're going to age it in bottle instead of us aging it in barrel kind of a thing. But Jim, you for sure have drank more SixMileBridge wines than I have recently. What's your take there?
Well, I mean, I think you've said this too. If you've got 20s and 19s, I would definitely drink your 20s and let the 19s have at least another year or two to go. I think the 20s are much more approachable right now. Anthony was sort of also the Shannon, the Limerick, because the Limerick is led with Merlot. It's definitely more approachable sooner than the Shannon. So I'd give the Shannon more time. And we have been, and Jen, if we haven't put in one of your shipments, we have, we made our chart up for, here are the drinking windows: too early, right time, probably past time. And I think that's also a good way to look at the wines and what you have. So if you don't have one, just email me or Rosie or Anthony, and we'll just send you one, or we'll send you an electronic. We'll send it by, email. We'll digitize it and send it to you.
Thank you. And a shout out to Rosie. My apparition story is that I wasn't a member, but I saw it. I'm a Right Bank girl all the way.
Oh.
And so when I saw that, I was like, yeah, wish list. Okay, I checked the box. And the next thing I knew, I got a confirmation email saying I'd gotten it. And I got an email from Rosie saying, how the heck did you get the apparition? And I said, I don't know. I checked a box and I got it. And she said, oh, it's all good. You can have it.
We try to say yes 100% of the time if it's at all possible.
So she became my best friend that day.
Rosie has a lot of people. I know the Tinkers know her well too, like Larry does, and so forth. She's a real gem, and I'm lucky that she's heading up all of our hospitality.
Yeah, she's been very helpful with this whole setting this up. So I really appreciate her help.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, so does anybody have a question for Anthony? Although we'll probably have him back, right, Anthony? You'll come back, right? Okay. Only question I really have is like, and you don't have to speak to it, is like, what's the dinner situation for you in the long term?
Denner's been great. Obviously, there's been a little bit of a cultural change there with everything. What I can say is that the Gallo family has been absolutely incredible to me, especially in giving me full creative control of what I want to do with winemaking and in the vineyard, and they've been very supportive of that. We just hired a new winemaker at Denner. Mark Williams is his name, and he comes with over 30 years of experience. He's incredibly passionate about the Rhone wines. He's worked a little bit on the Central Coast, but is coming down from about 10 years in Napa. And I've just been blending the 2023s with him, and it's been so fun to have a collaborator to sort of bounce ideas off of and test new things and get somebody else's perspective, which is sort of the team I'd built from the get-go. And I feel like I'd kind of lost in the last year. So I'm really excited about that. They're committed to keeping the core of Denner what it was. And my hope is, and I'm currently in negotiations to continue to help sort of guide the direction of the wines and the direction of the vineyard into the future.
Very good. Yeah, I can imagine. Dirt Worshipper happens to be one of my favorites. So I
just put the new vintage together on Monday. No, it took me 2 days, which is a little rare for me to have to spend 2 days on it. But the 23 might be the best vintage yet. It was sort of a showstopper. So I'm really ecstatic about the 23, and also just having someone like Mark who's a fan of the Denner wines, which is why he wanted to come down from Napa. I mean, you don't typically see winemakers leave Napa for Paso Robles. So a little bit of a feather in our cap to come do that. And just getting to push the envelope a little bit and have somebody sort of on my shoulder saying, make it better, make it better, make it better.
Well, Anthony?
I just felt my pocketbook get a little bit lighter when you said that.
you got another year.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm talking.
I'll have to put it in the Christmas club, I guess.
There you go.
Anthony, I
quick,
missed that. Were you
Anthony.
talking about Juan or somebody else coming from Napa?
So this is Mark Williams, who has come down from Louis Martini, and he's joining me on the Denner team as a winemaker.
The Gallo.
Yeah.
Anthony,
Yep.
how do you know Juan Mercado, and how is that project going?
So that project is called Rise with 2 I's, and I was actually introduced to Juan Mercado through Eric Jensen, and I've been cursing him ever since. But no, I'd heard Juan's name pretty much since I came into the industry, and what's so amazing about Juan is he's just an incredible connector of people, and so kind, and so just giving of knowledge. And I've met so many people through him in the 5 years that I've gotten to work with him. But I'd heard a rumor he was coming down to do a project in Paso, and Eric called me and said he's looking for a facility to do it in. Can he meet with you? And I'm thinking Denner's the right spot. And he and I just hit it off, and he'd had another winemaker in mind who was somebody that I was really hopeful to sort of learn from. And after a few visits and drinking some wine and tasting through stuff, he came to me and he said, I don't know if I need the other guy. I just want you to make the wines. And that project's been very fun because it's the only project I do that's not really 100% estate. So while we have some estate vineyards, we've gone out and sourced from some very, very fun vineyards, Paderewski, Catapult, Full Draw, Four Hearts, Onyx Vineyards. He's purchased Shadow Canyon. We've started to develop a vineyard next to one of Laventure's vineyards on Arbor Road. So it's been just a really challenging project and very fun. The biggest challenge for me has been working with Tempranillo, which is not a grape that I've worked with previously, other than, as Dave knows, a short stint at Villa Creek making the Mas de Maha wines with Chris Cherry. But those were different days. So that's been a learning curve for me of learning that grape. But we're about to bottle the first of our 22 vintage wines. The 21s will be out, I think, later this fall. The 20s were just released last week. And I feel like every year just gets a little bit better as we dial in our vineyard sites, and I learn those sites and I learn the varieties that we're working with. So it's an exciting project, making some fun wines.
Generally speaking, is 23 better than 21? Oh, not any label specific. Just
You know, this may be the unpopular decision opinion, but I like 21s better. I think 23s feel better because of coming off of 22 and how challenging that was. But I tend to like the drought years better. That being said, I'm pretty ecstatic with the 23s I've got. No one's going to be let down. You know, they're great vintages. I think probably 23 will age better in the long run, but right out of the chute, the 21s are so great.
And I've got a comment and a question. Comment first, I am really happy to hear you say that you're getting along well with Gallo, because I know that Ron gave you a lot of Ron, for all of his faults, gave you a lot of flexibility, to do your own projects and be your own creative boss. And so I'm really glad to hear that seems to be continuing at Gallo. And the question, and this is just my bad memory and trying to put a timeline together. What was your first year as winemaker at Denner?
First year,
not vintage, but calendar year.
Yeah, first year Soup to Nuts was 2010. I started at the end of 2009.
Okay. But congratulations again on your relationship with Gallo. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Jim, don't turn the TV on.
Yeah.
I had a drop down that said they had the worst or the greatest span of points in the wrong direction for us in the first half of NBA history. So I haven't been like trying to run back and see that disaster.
Hey,
so
Jim, they've only won one game in
that's
this
right.
whole playoff. So
no, you're right. I sat through one of them that was awful at the arena, and so there's 6 more to go.
Right.
Hey, I do have one last parting sort of comment or announcement. I'm very excited today. I actually closed on Windward Vineyards and Winery. Many of you may know it.
Yeah.
We've a partner and I, Brian Lopez, who owns a little vineyard on Vineyard Drive right next to Denner. He and I went in together and bought Windward. So we'll eventually, hopefully in the new year, early in the new year, we'll have our own space to try the Royal Nonsuch wines. Eventually we'll be making those wines in our own estate facility. And we'll also make the Lopi wines with Paul Lopez, who's been a long time co-worker of mine at Denner. His son is Brian, who owns the vineyard. So they're just getting launched off, and they've got some great Syrah and Cabernets from their estate vineyard. So a very fun thing coming up for us, and sort of rejuvenating what Mark and Maggie did at Windwards.
Congrats. That's awesome,
So
Anthony.
Mark and Maggie, or Mark Goldberg, right?
Yep.
They sold the vineyards.
They sold the vineyard, the winery. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe the Windward brand will live on with Ascension Ridge, in partnership with Ascension Ridge. So if you're a fan of the Windward wines, they're not going anywhere. The legacy of what Mark and Maggie built is going to go over to Philip at his place.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. And so
Thank you.
You're going to take are you going to have a tasting room there where Windward is?
Yeah, so we'll have we'll share the tasting space with Lopi. Our concept we're beating around right now, and obviously there's some time to work on this, is we'll host people, maybe 24 folks a day, 3 days a week, for a very intimate experience of what we do at Royal Nonsuch and where our influences come from. And there'll be an opportunity to try the wines, which is not something, try them before you buy them, which is not something we've ever had.
Wow, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Like that.
Maybe not. Maybe not. But that's congratulations. But if you're not familiar with Windward, it's on the kind of on your road to get to Lenny Colodo, right? So
To L'Aventure.
No, Lavature.
Lavature. Excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, it's a
spectacular.
fantastic spot. Mark and Maggie have been there since the late 80s, and they've made just some incredible wines off the property. And we're looking forward to taking the torch from them and making it our own.
Now they were pretty well known for Pinot, right?
Yep.
Are you still gonna pursue that, or?
No, we'll stay in our wheelhouse. I've been turned on by some of the stuff that I've gotten to do with Jim, especially Petit Bordeaux. I could see that working very well on that property, and maybe a little bit of Tempranillo, but the vineyard needs sort of new life breathed into it, as they do after a period of time. And we're looking forward to bringing our estate vineyard to that winery and also developing a new estate there at Windward.
Excellent. That's good news.
Mm.
Anybody else have a question? We'll wrap this up.
Well, not so
I wanna
much a
thank
question.
everybody for keeping me from having to watch the Mavericks get killed for the first 3 quarters. So I appreciate that. I'm going to go make sure my wife hasn't, passed out.
Right.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye, y'all.
Hey, Jim,
Take care.
have a
Thank
good,
you.
have, have a good trip to Italy. Yeah.
We will do that. We will do that. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Jim.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question for Anthony?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the Dresser and Gallo thing. Real quick, I know Gallo, when they make their wines, it's got to be exactly the same every time. They like intentionally make this crappy wine, for a better use of words, exactly the same every time. They must have to really grit their teeth to have you at dinner, doing what you do there, because that's, you're obviously not doing everything the same every time, and
I've made a lot of people uncomfortable, and I'm fine with that. But no, Gallo about really 15 years ago made a commitment to the luxury space in wine, and they've divided their business into the commercial business, which is exactly what you discussed. Of it's a recipe, and the wineries are referred to as manufacturing plants, and then the luxury business unit, and that's great. I mean, I cut my teeth as a teenager. They probably don't want to hear that drinking Boone's Farm. Yeah. Strawberry Hill, that was my favorite. Yep. And
Hey, that was good wine.
yeah, the luxury side of things is there's some great wines in Paulmeyer, Mossican. There's some great import wines. What Louis Martini is doing, Talbot up in Monterey. So there are some very vineyard specific terroir driven wines that they're making that I'm very sort of turned on by. So Jay is another great example in the sparkling wine space. It's making some very nice wine.
Jay, huh? They're Gallo now too?
Yep.
wow, didn't know that either.
I have to, I read some of the industry. I forget what the name of the thing, Daily something. And it'll tell you a lot that the industry is shrinking. It's the low end wine that's exiting.
Yeah.
This mid to high range, high end wine, the market is still very, very strong. And just the $15-20 bottle is not the market anymore, or will not be the market in the future, I should say. So
yeah.
Can I ask a general question? The Terry Hogue property, has anybody purchased that?
I just heard it was under contract, maybe early this week. I'm not sure who it is. Of course, it's Paso. There are some rumors swirling around, but I heard it's under contract. So that is another great property in the neighborhood that's going to sort of have new life, breathed into it. And I love Jen and Terry. I've known them for 15 years, and I'm so happy to see them having time off to travel. I think they're actually in Italy right now. So it'll be nice to see somebody carry on their legacy as well, whoever it ends up being.
Yeah,
I was a good people.
You're their new neighbor.
2 new neighbors.
right?
Yeah, they're neighbors, right?
Well, you guys are the new neighbor. Terry Hope's right next to Windward.
Yeah, Terry Hoag's about a half a mile away.
Where's your Royal Nonesuch vineyard? Where that's Templeton Gap or no?
No, we're out on York Mountain.
York Mount. Oh, okay. Out by
Yeah,
yeah.
we're about a mile northwest of Epic as the crow flies.
And are you? I didn't look at your. I tasted a bottle that my group brought to me. Are you making
Spit it
one?
out,
I don't
Mike.
know how many labels do you have on there?
So most of the wine is focused on the estate wine, which we just
Right.
call the Royal Nonesuch Farm, and then we make a white that's Claret Blanche, about 3 barrels of that every year, and then we do 3 to 4 barrels of a single block Grenache and a single block Syrah.
Canero, in one of them, Canero.
Canero is our white wine brand, white
Yeah.
wine from high limestone sites.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
I mean, you have your hands on a lot of projects there, so it's all
I have my hands in a
fascinating.
few.
We'll have to have you back because there's so many more. I'd like to get you and Juan on, and
That'd be a blast.
That'd be great next year, maybe after harvest. So
Perfect.
I'm already booked out till February through February.
Fantastic.
So, anybody else have any questions? We can wrap it up.
Thank you.
Okay.
This
Hey,
is great, Mike. Good job.
Yes, thank
Anthony,
you.
so great to have you on
Thank you.
finally, and Jim, of course, he's a great guy. So, thank you so much for joining us, and till next time, we'll bring you back.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Anthony, thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
So much. Thank you.